For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On a blustery fall morning in 2001, 62-year-old Walter Iqbal left his temporary rental on Hatteras Island in the Outer Banks of North Carolina for a quiet beach stroll. He never checked back in. Despite an extensive search of the treacherous Outer Banks shoreline and back dunes, Walter Iqbal, a retired postmaster, vanished without a trace. His sedan sat undisturbed at the access lot, a silent testament to his disappearance. For 15 years, his family lived with agonizing uncertainty, a void where answers should have been. Then, in 2016, a startling discovery was made. Thick-lensed spectacles were unearthed from a wind-scoured dune slipface. This is the complete investigation into what happened to Walter Iqbal and the relentless forces that may have claimed him. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. In the autumn of 2001, the Outer Banks of North Carolina, a slender ribbon of sand separating the Atlantic from the mainland, prepared for the arrival of a nor'easter. It was against this backdrop of impending meteorological drama that Walter Iqbal, a 62-year-old retired postmaster, embarked on what was intended to be a peaceful afternoon stroll. Iqbal, a man of quiet routine, had found solace in the desolate beauty of Hatteras Island's back dunes, a landscape of shifting sands and whispering sea oats. His visit to the coast was a retreat into the tranquility of nature, a stark contrast to the storm that was rapidly gathering strength offshore. On the morning of the storm's approach, Iqbal's silver sedan was observed parked at a public access lot, a common sight for beachgoers. The vehicle remained, undisturbed and locked, for hours beyond the expected return of its owner. As the wind began to whip the sand and the first fringes of the nor'easter made landfall, a growing unease settled over the small coastal community. Walter Iqbal had not checked back in. His family, unable to reach him, raised the initial alarm, contacting local authorities and initiating a preliminary search. The immediate mystery was profound. How could a man simply vanish from a frequented beach, leaving behind no trace but his car? The vast, churning expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, already restless with the burgeoning storm, immediately became the prime suspect in his disappearance. The powerful currents and the imminent fury of the nor'easter offered a terrifying, yet plausible, explanation for a sudden vanishing. Yet without a body, without a struggle, without even a footprint beyond the high tide line, the fate of Walter Iqbal remained an unsettling void in the relentless advance of the storm. The quiet retired postmaster had dissolved into the formidable landscape, leaving behind only questions and the silent testimony of his abandoned vehicle. The alarm concerning Walter Iqbal's disappearance triggered an immediate, urgent response. Law enforcement, Coast Guard units, and volunteer search parties converged on Hatteras Island, initiating a comprehensive search operation. Shoreline patrols commenced with relentless dedication, covering miles of beach both north and south of the sedan's location. Efforts were made to track footprints, but the windswept sand offered little purchase, and the rapidly deteriorating weather conditions ensured any faint impressions would soon be erased. Air searches were attempted, but the escalating nor'easter quickly grounded aircraft, rendering any aerial reconnaissance impossible just hours after the initial report. Among those coordinating the on-ground efforts was Park Ranger Dory Mayfield, a veteran of the Outer Banks National Seashore, with years of experience navigating the region's unique challenges. Mayfield understood the fickle nature of the barrier islands, where serene beauty could quickly turn treacherous. She directed teams through the back dunes and along the surfline, acutely aware that time was a critical factor as the storm intensified. Investigators interviewed anyone who might have seen Iqbal, canvassing local businesses and residents. Surfcaster Hank Blalock, a familiar figure on the Hatteras beaches, confirmed he had been in the general vicinity that morning but recalled no specific encounter with Walter Iqbal, nor anything unusual. Like many, Blalock had been focused on the changing weather, preparing for the storm's full force. The investigation quickly became a study. In absence, there was no sign of a struggle, no discarded personal effects, no note, and most crucially, no body. The only tangible evidence was Iqbal's locked sedan, a silent testament to his presence, now starkly contrasted by his complete vanishing. The ocean, already a prime suspect, began its work of erasing any potential trace. The powerful nor'easter, now fully upon the Outer Banks, churned the waters with unprecedented violence. Waves crashed with destructive force, reshaping the shoreline and scouring the sand. Any evidence, any clue, any potential remains would have been violently dispersed, carried out to sea, or buried beneath tons of shifting sand, rendering the immediate search efforts tragically futile. The storm did not merely hamper the investigation. It systematically dismantled any hope of a quick resolution, leaving behind only the cold, hard fact of an empty beach and a missing man. As the fury of the nor'easter subsided, leaving behind a reshaped coastline and a lingering chill, the intensity of the search for Walter Iqbal began its inevitable decline. Days bled into weeks, and the initial surge of urgency gave way to the grim reality of dwindling leads. Despite the exhaustive efforts of Park Ranger Dory Mayfield and her teams, alongside state and federal agencies, no further trace of the retired postmaster emerged. The ocean, having violently claimed its secret, offered no apologies, no clues, no final resting place. The extensive interviews yielded no new witnesses who could shed light on Iqbal's final moments. Surfcaster Hank Blalock, like many others, had only the memory of an approaching storm, not a missing man. For authorities, Walter Iqbal's case transitioned from an active investigation to a perplexing cold case. The file, once thick with daily reports and search grids, slowly became a testament to an enduring mystery. There was no body to recover, no evidence of foul play, no logical explanation beyond the terrifying simplicity of vanishing into the vastness of the Atlantic. For Iqbal's family, the silence was a profound and agonizing absence, a perpetual question mark hanging over their lives. Without a definitive answer or even a body, the process of grief was stalled, replaced by a haunting uncertainty. The Outer Banks, a region defined by its dynamic and often treacherous relationship with the sea, had long been a place where both ships and men could simply disappear. Its history was replete with tales of vessels swallowed by shifting sands or powerful currents, their crews vanishing without a trace. Walter Iqbal's story, now devoid of any new information, seemed destined to join this chilling lore, another name added to the unwritten ledger of those claimed by the unforgiving coast. The case became a poignant reminder of the Barrier Island's inherent dangers, a place of serene beauty capable of immense, silent destruction. 15 years would pass without a single breakthrough. The official file, marked unresolved, gathered dust, a silent monument to the enduring enigma of Walter Iqbal's disappearance. The initial flurry of activity became a distant memory, replaced by a quiet resignation among those who had once hoped for answers. The sands of Hatteras Island continued their relentless shift, sculpted by wind and tide, burying some secrets deeper while perhaps, unbeknownst to anyone, preparing to reveal others. Walter Iqbal had become one of the Outer Banks' many unsolved mysteries, a phantom of the dunes and the deep. The Outer Banks, a landscape defined by constant flux, continued its relentless geological transformation in the 15 years following Walter Iqbal's disappearance. Wind and tide tirelessly reshaped the Barrier Islands, eroding some sections of the coastline while building up others. Dunes migrated, inlets shifted, and the very ground beneath the sea oats was perpetually in motion, a testament to nature's ceaseless work. It was in this environment of ceaseless change, in the late spring of 2016, that a profound and unexpected revelation occurred on Hatteras Island. A local resident, walking a familiar path through the back dunes near the Cape Hatteras lighthouse, noticed an unusual glint in a newly scoured section of sand. Recent strong winds had carved a deep slipface into the side of a prominent dune, exposing layers of sediment that had been buried for years. Partially protruding from the exposed sand was a small, dark object. Upon closer inspection, it was revealed to be a pair of spectacles, their thick lenses still intact, though clouded by years of exposure and fine sand. They appeared to have been unearthed by the very forces that had once buried them. The resident immediately reported the find to local authorities, who in turn contacted the Dare County Sheriff's Office. The glasses were carefully retrieved and cataloged as potential evidence. The distinctive, thick prescription lenses, coupled with the age and style of the frames, immediately prompted investigators to revisit cold cases from the area. A meticulous cross-referencing of missing persons files from the past 2 decades revealed a striking match. Walter Iqbal, the retired postmaster who had vanished in 2001, was known to wear a very specific and strong prescription. Records from the initial investigation, including interviews with his family, confirmed the unique characteristics of his eyewear. The discovery of Walter Iqbal's spectacles, 15 years after he had simply disappeared, sent a ripple of renewed hope and urgency through the long-dormant investigation. What had been a complete enigma, a man swallowed by the sea without a trace, now had a tangible anchor. These were not merely a pair of glasses. They were the first physical link to Iqbal since his sedan was found abandoned. The silent, shifting dunes of Hatteras Island had, after a decade and a half, finally relinquished a single, personal artifact, offering a tantalizing possibility that the sea's enduring secret might at last be unraveled. The cold case, once resigned to the archives, was suddenly very much alive again. The discovery of Walter Iqbal's spectacles immediately triggered a renewed, methodical investigation. The glasses, carefully retrieved from the dune, became the central piece of evidence, handled with the utmost forensic precision. They were transported to a state laboratory where technicians meticulously examined the frames and lenses under high magnification, searching for any residual DNA, skin cells, or microfibers that might have survived 15 years of burial and exposure to the elements. Every scratch, every speck of adhering sand was documented, photographed, and analyzed, hoping to uncover a subtle clue about their journey or the circumstances of their loss. Simultaneously, the dune slipface where the glasses were found transformed into a critical new crime scene. Investigators, led by Park Ranger Dory Mayfield, meticulously mapped and photographed the site, noting the specific geological features that had led to the glasses' exhumation. The wind-scoured nature of the dune suggested a powerful erosive force at play, hinting at the dynamic processes that had both buried and then revealed the artifact. Teams sifted through vast quantities of sand in the immediate vicinity, hoping to unearth other personal effects, but the shifting sands yielded no further clues. The unique nature of the discovery, particularly its geological context, prompted investigators to seek specialized expertise. Professor Li Zhen, a renowned coastal geomorphologist from the University of North Carolina, was brought into the case. Her expertise lay in understanding the complex dynamics of barrier islands, how wind, waves, and currents shape shorelines, move sand, and interact with human artifacts over time. Professor Zhen's initial task was to analyze the dune's history, studying its stratification, composition, and the forces that had created the specific slipface, to begin reconstructing the timeline of the glasses, burial, and eventual reappearance. Guided by Professor Zhen's insights, investigators revisited the cold case files with fresh eyes. Meteorological records from 2001 were pulled, scrutinizing wind speeds, tidal charts, and the precise trajectory and intensity of the nor'easter that had swept through the Outer Banks at the time of Iqbal's disappearance. Historical satellite imagery, though limited in detail for 2001, was reviewed for any indications of significant coastal changes or inlet shifts around the incident area. Old coastal charts were cross-referenced with modern surveys, all in an effort to piece together the environmental conditions of 15 years prior and understand the powerful natural forces that had once claimed Walter Iqbal, and now, against all odds, offered a fragment of him back. The meticulous forensic examination of Walter Iqbal's spectacles by Professor Li Zhen yielded the first truly significant breakthrough in the 15-year-old cold case. Under specialized microscopes, Professor Zhen's team discovered intricate patterns etched into the metal frames, distinct formations of salt crystals and microabrasions consistent with prolonged exposure to a violent saltwater environment. This was not merely corrosion, it was a specific signature, a salt etching, indicative of powerful wave action and wind-driven spray. The characteristics of these etchings, their depth, distribution, and the specific crystalline structures provided a unique fingerprint that could be analyzed against known environmental conditions. Professor Zhen painstakingly cross-referenced these forensic findings with historical meteorological and oceanographic data from the Outer Banks. Her analysis focused on the precise conditions of the nor'easter that struck Hatteras Island in late 2001, around the time of Iqbal's disappearance. The salt etching on the frames, she determined, was a near-perfect match for the storm surge window of that specific event. The intensity of the saltwater exposure, combined with the abrasive action of wind-blown sand during the storm, aligned precisely with the patterns observed on the spectacles. This monumental scientific connection established, with high probability, that the glasses had entered the ocean during the height of the very storm in which Walter Iqbal vanished. With the timing of the glasses, submersion established, Professor Zhen then embarked on a complex task of coastal geomorphological reconstruction. Utilizing historical bathymetric charts, old aerial photographs, and satellite imagery, she meticulously plotted the dynamic shifts in Hatteras Island's coastline over the past 15 years. This included significant inlet shifts, natural processes where new channels cut through the barrier island, altering currents and sand deposition patterns. By overlaying the known conditions of the 2001 nor'easter with the subsequent geological transformations, a chilling trajectory began to emerge. The combined data, integrating the forensic evidence from the glasses with the historical environmental modeling, traced a powerful hydrological event, a rip cut. This was not merely a rip current, but a particularly dangerous and localized outflow of water, intensified by the storm surge and the unique topography of the Hatteras shoreline. The trajectory of this rip cut, Professor Zhen's models revealed, led directly into a specific, infamous area of the Outer Banks, a historical wreck channel. This channel, a deep trough carved by powerful currents and shifting sands, had long been tied to vanishings, a treacherous graveyard for both ships and, historically, unfortunate individuals caught in its unforgiving grip. The glasses, dislodged from Walter Iqbal, had been swept into this very channel, to be buried and then, 15 years later, revealed by the ceaseless work of the sea. The meticulous scientific investigation, spanning 15 years from the initial disappearance, finally converged into a cohesive and chilling explanation for the fate of Walter Iqbal. The evidence, painstakingly gathered and analyzed, painted a grim yet clear picture. On that fateful day in 2001, as the nor'easter gathered strength, Walter Iqbal was caught unaware in a powerful rip cut. This wasn't merely a strong current. It was an intensified outflow, exacerbated by the developing storm surge and the unique, treacherous underwater topography of the Hatteras shoreline. He was, in all likelihood, swept swiftly and violently away from the beach he had been strolling, pulled into the deep, unforgiving waters of the Atlantic. His thick-lensed spectacles, dislodged by the force of the water, were carried along this same path. The rip cut, as Professor Li Zhen's models demonstrated, led directly into the historical wreck channel, an infamous trough where powerful currents converge, a place long known for its capacity to claim and conceal. Walter Iqbal had been lost at sea, his body likely carried far offshore or buried deep within the shifting sands of the channel. His glasses, however, had been caught in the dynamic dance of sand and current, eventually settling within a dune, only to be exhumed 15 years later by the very forces that had once hidden them. This scientific resolution, while offering no recovery of a body, provided a profound and long-awaited form of closure for the unanswered questions surrounding Walter Iqbal's vanishing. It was a tangible explanation for an enigma that had haunted investigators and, by extension, his family, for over a decade and a half. The true culprit in Walter Iqbal's disappearance was not human malice, but the formidable, indifferent power of the Outer Banks environment itself. Its ever-shifting sands, its unpredictable currents, and the raw, untamed fury of its storms combined to create a landscape of profound beauty and equally profound peril. Walter Iqbal's story now joined the chilling annals of the Outer Banks, a region famously known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. It was a place where countless ships, like the fabled Carol A. Deering and their crews had vanished without a trace, their fates swallowed by the sea. Iqbal's case, unique in its scientific unraveling, served as a poignant modern reminder of this enduring reality. His story, finally understood, added another layer to the lore of these barrier islands, a testament to the sea's enduring power and its capacity to hold secrets for generations. It was a stark and humbling lesson in the respect due to nature's wild, beautiful, and ultimately unforgiving domain.